Hey everybody, today we're going to take a look at editing photos. We're going to use two different photo apps to take your photos from just so-so to hopefully a lot better. The first one we'll use is Google Photos, and the second one is Photopea. Photopea is a Photoshop emulator that you can use in your browser, and it's completely free. So let's take a look at these. Alright guys, let's take a look at some of the photos that I've taken using my phone. Now I don't have a fantastic phone. I have a LG K20 from a few years ago, I think is what it is. It's not a great phone. It's not a great camera in the phone. This is an example of a photo it would take pretty average. This is a photo that it would take pretty terrible. But what I was able to do is bring these into some editing photos and take this photo into something like this, or maybe even something like that. By themselves, they wouldn't be a whole lot of interest, but I think by bringing them into these editing programs, you'll see that we can save some of the details and really make these photos into really interesting pieces. Alright, so let's take a look at a couple of these. This one here is pretty dark, and I think it needs a lot of work. So let's bring that into the editor. Let's click on that editor right there, and first thing you see is you have a whole bunch of pre-made filters that you could apply to it. Some of them are good, some of them probably are absolute garbage. One of the first I usually reach for is this one called Moderna. It seems to work out pretty well. It kind of makes it look a little gritty, which, let's be honest, a bad phone looks a little gritty anyways, so it kind of plays it up, maybe makes it look like it was intentional. But for this first time, let's just not touch those at all. Let's keep it on the original and bring in the actual manual editor. Inside the editor, we have adjustments for light, color, and pop. I'll explain what those are one by one. First, we have the light, and that's going to be, well, the overall exposure of it. You can make it maybe look overexposed or underexposed. In our case here, we want to look a little bit more. The color is going to refer to how much color, which is actually just the saturation, and there's a lot more under here that we'll look at. And the pop makes things very contrasty so that the edges look really bright and crispy. So under the light, we see that we do actually have the exposure, which was really all we were controlling up here. I do think it's underexposed, so I do want to bring up the exposure a little bit. Now the contrast, you can see over here you have very dark darks and light lights, and over here things get a little bit grayer. I think for us, I actually want to have it a little bit grayer. And the highlights is going to deal with the brighter areas, and I would like to bring out any highlights there are, and there's not many. The shadows is going to either make the darker parts darker or lighten the darker parts a little bit. And I think I want to do that. Now the whites is pretty much the same as highlights, and the blacks pretty much the same as shadows. So the last thing I'll do here is add a tiny little bit of vignette. At best case scenario, this photo is going to look a little old when I've been done with it, so I like that vignette for that purpose. Now under color, all we were dealing with before was the saturation. Pull out the saturation and it kind of becomes black and white. Dial up the saturation and the colors become really vibrant. I'm going to have it a little bit more vibrant than it was before. I'm also going to warm it up a little bit so that it feels a little bit more summery, because it certainly was. Now, the other direction is going to start turning blue, so this is kind of orangey. And these two, you can see, are going to go from magenta and green. So that's what the tint is going to do. I'm going to leave that alone. Now there is no skin tone in here, so I'm going to leave that alone too. And there is no deep blue, so nothing's going to happen whatsoever on those. So this is about as good as we can possibly do. I'm going to hit make a copy, save a copy so that we can actually keep the original and compare it to the new one. But I think that one looks mysterious and dark and moody or whatever, and the one before just looked dark, not cool. So we've done a lot better there with this one, in my opinion. I might want to see it again, but this time maybe less color. So same thing as before, except now I might just bring out the color, bring down the saturation a little bit, more like that, and I'll be able to compare those two as well. Save a copy, and when I go back to my folder, I can look at the two side by side and say, in fact, yes, this one appeals to me a little bit more than that one. Let's take a look at one more. This one has already been edited for color and light just inside of this editor, but one thing that stands out to me is that it needs to get cropped. I have all of this space down here and it really doesn't help things out a whole lot. So I'm going to click not on any of these, not on this, but on the cropping tool. To change how it's cropped, I can go to some preset crops, or I can just freeform it, which is what I'm going to do today. I like now that I still have some of the path, I still have a way to enter into the photo, but at the same time there's not quite as much extra space down there. Now if I did need to rotate this ever so slightly, maybe like that. You can go up and down in order to rotate the photo. But I took it pretty well straight. Maybe you could stand to go 1 degree to make that look a little bit straighter. Once you're happy, you're going to hit done, and then you can, just like before, go ahead and, if I can see it, there we go, and save a copy. Or in this case, I'm just going to hit done. So now let's go ahead and go to the part number 2 and edit something in Photopea. Photopea is going to be a little bit more in depth, and we're only going to do the same edits inside of Photopea that we did in Google Photos. But let's take this photo of my son in my living room. I'm going to download that picture, and then I'm going to bring it into Photopea. To do that, I just ignore all of this and go to Open, and I'm going to bring in his photo right there. Perfect. Now I want to adjust the lighting first, and then I'll adjust the crop. To do the lighting, we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, Levels. Here it is up there. There are lots of different ways of doing this. This is the easiest one for us right now. One thing I want to do is get rid of all of this nasty stuff back there. I can see the bookshelf. So I'm going to bring that down, and instantly you can see that those bookshelves have gone away. What I'm doing is bringing the midtones and bringing them darker. And there almost were no midtones on the figure, so I got rid of all of that extra busyness in the background. I'm happy with that. I'm going to hit OK. Now I can go to the crop tool, which is this one right here. It's also keystroke C, and I'm just going to draw a box on top of him. I'm not loving quite where that is, and I do want to bring this in a little bit like that. I don't want any of this in. That's my rationale for doing what I'm doing there. But there, that looks pretty good. I like it. I'm going to zoom in by hitting Control+, and there. That's a much better looking photo than it was before. File, export as JPEG, and you'll see that it's going to ask you how high of quality you want. Folks, if you're like me and you didn't have a good quality photo to start with, you want to keep this sucker up to 100% every single time. I'm going to hit save. It's going to download, and then I can upload it to whatever social or folder I want to in my computer or in the web. This is a big program. I showed you a few things. Play around with it, learn how to do it, and have a good time. There is no wrong way to edit a photo, as long as you think it looks better. And if you think you made it worse, edit undo all day long. Just make sure you save a copy so that you haven't written over your original one, and it can't get worse. Have fun, enjoy it, make better photos. I'll see you next time.